Welcome to the Working with Subject Matter Experts podcast. If you're responsible for keeping your business profitable into the future, you need to be managing your corporate knowledge to develop, manufacture, and deliver your best products and services. Here at the Working with Subject Matter Experts podcast, we talk about managing organizational knowledge to keep your business strong. I'm your co-host, Nathan Eckel, and we are here with the host, Peggy Salvatore. Peggy, how are you?
Hi, Nathan. I'm doing great today. How are you doing?
I am doing quite well. So we are here today, and we're here because you wrote this phenomenal book called Finding Your Subject Matter Experts, and that happened after you wrote your first book, which was Working with Subject Matter Experts, and realized that you had 4 giant unanswered practical questions that needed to be addressed. And we're not going to talk about that today because we already talked about that back on a prior episode that people could easily locate. And so one of those things that you did in the book, Finding Your Subject Matter Experts, is you started painting pictures. And these aren't hypothetical pictures at all, because the people that are listening to this podcast episode right now, they're living right now in one of these scenarios that you described for knowledge transfer. Every one of their cultures in their companies and their standard operating procedures and their onboardings, it's going to fit in one of these scenarios. And I love how you set it up, because you have a second worst case scenario. You describe a worst case scenario, and then you talk about the best case scenario. So Peggy, let's just dive right on in here and help people who are listening to this be able to figure out which world they're living in right now.
Okay. And all of this came out of real situations that I've seen. So you're right. People in our audience are currently living one of these realities. So if you're thinking about where your company is at with knowledge transfer, you either have the worst case scenario, which is that some of your most valuable employees are taking critical skill sets and they are walking out the door and you are never going to see them again.
Ouch.
You're never going to see them again. And then your best case scenario is that you can use their last best years with the company and use them as experts in your training department to make sure you capture what they know so you've preserved it and you can pass it on to new employees. That's your best case scenario.
Yay.
So what's the second worst? What's the almost worst case scenario? The almost worst case scenario is that when you discover that these really valuable people have left your company, you can find them and bring them back. But why is it the second worst case scenario? It's because usually it's going to cost you a fortune to bring these people back as consultants. They're going to double and triple their salary. They're going to come back on their own time schedule when they're not golfing. So it's going to cost you. It's going to be inconvenient, but they're going to have you over a barrel. So the best thing that you want to do is find out who your experts are, start working with them today before they leave your organization.
Absolutely. So, Peggy, let's we just kind of laid it all out there, and people know which scenario that they're living in right now. Let's just talk about that last scenario, which is the in-between one, or let's talk about what people can do to up-level. Better question. What can they do to up-level the scenario that they're in right now? If they're in a scenario, if they're in a place where they have experts, they're about to retire, and that's everywhere. Every organization has that, except for maybe some startups and financial tech companies and things like that, if they're very, very small. What's the easiest, simplest, and smartest way that they can proactively get in front of the needle on this thing before it bites them?
No, I really like the way you talk about it, getting out in front of the problem, because that's what they need to do. They need to really do a complete corporate analysis. What are their competitive advantages? What are the things their customers need and require from them? And they need to isolate what those things are and who internally knows those things. They need to find those people and have the discussions about what their experts bring to the table that makes them a competitive and profitable organization. They need to be doing that today.
So there is a process in your book, and you talk about the filter. For those of you at home, we're going to just save you an awful lot of money if you just do what I say right now. Get a copy of Peggy's book, Finding Your Subject Matter Experts. Turn in the book to chapter 4 and keep reading until the end of chapter 6, I believe, because Peggy lays this entire process out. You can put it into place. You can start to execute it right there in your company, and that's really the best bet. That's if you haven't already done this, if you haven't already naturally set up a process to mitigate and to proactively prevent this, and if you don't already have a culture of just complete transparency and knowledge sharing and documentation and interviews and all of that, then this is your next best bet. Anything that you have to say about that, Peggy?
Yeah, well, I agree that it's their best bet is to buy the book and look at this, or even better, it's a complicated process. We have workshops that we can come in and help people walk them through this process, because they're digging down into what you have. Sometimes when it's your business, it's a little hard to see the forest for the trees, and it helps to bring in an outside consultant who can facilitate the process internally and help you turn over those things, places you might not even think to look.
So that's great. So if I hear this correctly, so you've got the DIY, do-it-yourself solution, get the book, go through the book, implement the book on your own. But you're saying that you even have consultants that can come in and just breeze through this, facilitate the process. What does that look like?
We have workshops that we can come into your company and literally facilitate these workshops ourselves and help your business walk through all of your critical pathways. And again, these filters are all laid out, but walk through your critical pathways to find your most essential information that you can't afford to lose and figure out who's got that information. The other way to do it is some huge businesses may need to run this workshop in many different divisions, and sometimes in specific plants or specific units, and could end up running this workshop many, many times through their organization in order to find everything. So the workshop is actually available for purchase with a train the trainer component. It is a complete workshop with all facilitator guides, and we can give them some support, and they can run this many, many times as they need to. And also, it's an iterative process. You're never done, because your company, if your company's growing and staying profitable, you're always learning more. So you need to continue to do this. It's an agile process, you might say. It's iterative in that way.
And as part of what you do, Peggy, I mean, we talk a little bit about, the real solution here is to just move this process and prioritize it sequentially, and move it from just the last ditch effort of getting people who just retired and buying them back and harvesting all that. That is beyond the end of the life cycle. Really, this stuff should really happen before people are even hired. There should be an expectation, there should be an onboarding, and then there should be a culture where people are documenting, people are interviewing each other, people are just on their tiptoes to lean into this for that very reason. It really comes down to onboarding and hiring and expectations if you really want to be as forward thinking as you possibly can as an executive. Any thoughts about how someone can do that, how someone can change over time the culture and the policies and advocate and champion for that when they're not the only decision maker in some of these medium or even large companies?
Well, and I think you make a really good point. And all of the best organizations today are learning organizations, and we know this. So by having that mindset and by hiring people who have that mindset, you're automatically leveling up this whole process, because there is the expectation going into it that all that knowledge is shared. There is job sharing. There is doubling. There is mentoring going on all the time. And it strengthens the organization and it strengthens the individuals.
Absolutely. So it's the choice is back to the listener, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, the choice is yours. And those of you that are in smaller companies, really the choice is yours, because there's an awful lot you can do if you're a founder, if you are an investor, if you are someone that has a big say in a smaller company, there's an awful lot you can do. If you are like a lot of people in a medium or large company, then this is going to have to be something that you champion and that you become skilled in over time, and conversations and influence that you'll have to build behind this to really see the results that you want. I'm just so happy that Peggy wrote this book, Finding Your Subject Matter Expert, and even before that, working with subject matter experts. And it's just an idea whose time has not only come, but it's been here for decade after decade after decade. And in a knowledge economy, or even beyond a knowledge economy, the value of that knowledge is really everything. So we hope that you are in the best case scenario, but of the three that we talked about today. But even if you're not, there are things that you can do to move towards a proactive posture in your culture, in your actions, in your onboarding. And we certainly wish you the best, Peggy and I. Over to you, Peggy. Any final words?
Nathan, you summed it up beautifully. Yeah, we want to see everybody in their best case scenario. If they're not there now, we can get you there.
All right. Hey, we'll see you on the next episode, where we will be talking about how that you can capture critical knowledge, 4 solutions that will help you capture that critical knowledge that you need from your subject matter experts. See you over there.